afternoon. Ron Graham, aka your console, the Net Worth Nation, with another video today. I wanted to really take a look, as we say, behind curtain number one when we talk about what really was the driving force behind the Net Worth Nation narrative. Now, I know I've shared this before, but I think this is the video that really brings it full circle. And what I recognize, because I was a part and still consider myself a part of this community. And the reason why is because my roots come from the middle class community. And so in this video, they're going to highlight a lot of the things and the narratives that have taken place within the middle class community over the last 30 to 40 years. Now, what's very interesting about this particular video is that when we think about the net worth nation concept, in other words, of increasing our net worth, a lot of the middle class community persons were very much valued and leveled up in their net worth based on home ownership and land ownership, meaning that by owning a couple of homes of land and some products and services like that, because you even have small realtors, small businesses that have a couple of doors, couple of properties, again, not rich, but pretty well off, will fall into this middle class community. And why I'm looking at it is because there's been a lot of buzz over the last couple of months. And one of the main things that we all must admit to is that what our purchasing power was able to do maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, is not quite doing what it did then. And so in this video, a lot of this stuff is highlighted. And one of the real reasons why the Net Worth Nation was founded was to level up the middle class community with a lot of the types of tools, products, and goods that absolutely can help absorb blows such as this. But in the meantime, let's take a quick peek at the video.
The middle class was once a symbol of the American dream, representing financial stability and endless opportunities. But today, it seems to be a thing of the past.
The middle class is no longer the majority in America.
What has happened to the American middle class, those people whose drive and optimism have lifted the nation out of financial trouble into triumph time and time again?
From Boston to Goldsboro, North Carolina, to Midland, Texas, to Seattle, there are fewer adults living in middle-class households.
And the question is, can the middle class rally once more to pull America ahead?
What we used to call the middle class has undergone profound transformations since the 1970s. A survey by the Federal Reserve revealed that 33% of middle-income adults cannot afford an unexpected expense of $400, a startling figure that underscores the economic fragility of this group.
We've spent much time this year.
So again, very earth-shattering information. You have to understand exactly what that's saying. In an event of an accident, not even to be able to put your hands on a couple of $100 in the case of an emergency, that's amazing, right? And that's absolutely frightening, because one of the things we have to realize is that at first glance, that's not what you see. In the average middle class society, you'll see home ownership, cars in the driveway, and even if you don't have home ownership, you see cars down, cars out front on the sidewalk park. You'll see people walking around in their finest clothes, going to and from work on a consistent day-to-day basis. And so what I'm saying is that when you think about what this video is showing, notice how it didn't necessarily just show Black people or white people. See, this narrative that only Blacks and white people are suffering from middle-class community downsizing is an absolute myth. We have to recognize that there's more to it than what meets the eye.
This year, talking about the travails of the middle class. Now, a new analysis shows how it's shrinking in most U.S. metro areas.
This phenomenon is part of a trend that has been occurring for decades. The Pew Research Center found that while in 1971, 61% of American adults belonged to the middle class, by 2023, it had decreased to 50%, and this number continues to decline.
Tough times are forcing more and more Americans to tighten their belts and even switch jobs.
94% of America's middle class no longer believes that central idea that their families will move up the economic ladder. Today, America's middle class is reeling.
This trend suggests not only a change in economic composition, but also in the perception and reality of what it means to be middle class in the U.S., a key.
So let me ask you a question. Based on what we've seen so far, do you really think when you watch a debate or when you listen to somebody get up in front of a pulpit or whatever they are and they're talking and they're saying these types of things, or your politicians are saying these types of things, and they're all talking? They're all talking. Let's be 100% crystal clear. But when you see these things occurring, and let's be realistic, and let's be quite frank, I don't really think I needed to do this video for you guys out there in my audience to have to know what's going on here. You are living it. You are feeling it. Now, maybe you may have to get a nice little tap on the shoulder because some, suave talking candidate or whatever came up and told you things were better or could, or good, or, whatever. They're good now. Everything is good. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist nor this type of video to let you know out there that everything is not good. Now, can it become good? Can it get good? Absolutely. But for right now, let's continue to look at some of these problems.
Key factor in this change is the rise of the squeezed middle class, a term that reflects the growing difficulties in maintaining or improving the middle class standard of living.
In the last 2 decades, family income only increased 20%, while health insurance rose 155%. The cost of housing rose 56%. The cost of a college education, 43%.
Housing, education, healthcare, and other essential services costs have increased to record levels, while incomes have not kept pace, creating unprecedented pressure on middle-income families.
While incomes have not kept pace. So again, this is the running joke me and the buddies of I have. Everything is going up except our salaries, right? Everything is going up, okay, except our annual salaries. And therein lies the problem. That's why I don't understand how someone can get up in front of you on a national televised audience, I don't care who they are, in a pulpit, in your house, on the block, wherever. How can anybody get up in front of you and talk to you and get you to take your eyes off of this narrative, to get you to be distracted of this narrative? This narrative should never be removed from your thought process. And again, this narrative is not black or white. This narrative is not about what religion you are. As a matter of fact, this narrative is not even about what gender you choose to be. This narrative is the narrative that everybody in this country, and that's inside of this type of a video or can hear this video, is susceptible to the things that's taking place in the video. Now, there are, again, a lot of things that we do here at the Network Nation to offset a lot of this nonsense. But the reality of it is that many of us are still affected by it. And everyone moves at a different pace and space. Not everyone is going to just turn the light switch on and flip, right? And start doing all these things to get yourself out of this. A lot of this stuff is a process. A lot of this stuff is uneducating, unlearning, the garbage that's being pumped and poured into our psyches.
So, what exactly happened to the American middle class, and what can be done about it? What we knew as the middle class has changed over the past few years, especially for new generations. In 2023, the situation became more complicated for millennials, of whom only 60% belong to middle-income households in their 20s, compared to almost 70% of baby boomers at the same age. This decline not only reflects an economic change, but also a generational change in access to the middle class. Data shows that households with a family income of just over $100,000 are facing financial difficulties due to taxes, insurance, student loans, and the high cost of living. This underscores the current middle-class paradox. Incomes that in theory should guarantee stability, but in practice fall short.
New federal report finds Americans are struggling to keep up with paying their bills.
People all across the country working in jobs once considered middle class, but now living far below a middle class lifestyle. 36.
So this is why when I had Miss Tanisha Tony from Lux Platinum Enterprises on recently, she said she wanted to reach out and apologize to the Gen Z audience. And one of the real reasons is what she was saying is because they recognize, as you saw in this slide here, that the money that we made, their parents made, that they most likely can't get by with it. And she was saying that that's why she noticed their frustrations and their short patience, for lack of better terminology, when it comes to them looking at the same ideologies that we gave them when we worked. Now, us as Gen Xers or what have you, we should know better, obviously, because we started seeing the writing on the wall in our lifetimes. So obviously, we should look at that as the model when we started to wonder and guess why our children were not buying, or drinking the Kool-Aid or dancing to the music that we were playing. So I do want to say that in this environment, those Net Worth Nation members that we have been pushing the entrepreneurial spirit, now you kind of see where that ideology comes in handy, because those young people who are willing to work in their craft, monetize their hobbies and their likes, they're able to now create that other stream of income that kind of can avoid this nightmare here. But again, these are the parents that they sit and watch who come home 10, 12-hour shifts, 2 jobs. And this is the things that they hear.
Percent of consumers say they've had trouble paying in just the last week.
Debt has become an omnipresent burden for many American families, with total household debt reaching a record $16.5 billion in the fourth quarter of 2023, and this figure is on the rise.
Americans are digging themselves into a deep financial hole, approaching $1 trillion in credit card debt.
Americans are taking on more debt, $17.5 trillion overall.
Data shows Americans are digging themselves deeper into credit card debt, which is now hitting an all-time high.
Student loan debt, amounting to $1.6 billion, is particularly significant, highlighting the high cost of education as a crucial factor in middle-class precarity.
There is now more than $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. This really touches every facet of American lives, both individuals, their communities, our economy, and our country.
For most students, how to pay for school is a major consideration. Student loan debt is a $1.5 trillion financial crisis in America.
So again, this is the other shoe that falls. So now you have your kids looking at you saying, I don't really want to work like you did, mom and dad, working all hard, working long for these jobs. And then you come home one day and, they give you with this pink slip or whatever it is. Now they don't even seem like give you a slip. They just, you get a text message or an email saying don't come to work. So the point I'm making is that they don't see it from that perspective. And now, as you see here with the student loan debt, now they're even second guessing whether they should even go to college. And you can't argue with their reasoning. You can't argue with the realities that they're seeing right in front of their eyes, not just from their own personal experiences, but the experiences of people that are close to them, their friends, people that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it's not just something they see in passing on the CNN nightly news. This is real live issues that our young people are dealing with. So this is where Tanisha Tony from Lux Platinum Enterprises was saying this is why she apologizes to that group, because they don't want to do this.
The average household with student debt owes more than $47,000.
Homeownership, another pillar of the American dream, has become unattainable for many. A study showed that nearly 23% of homeowners consider buying a home was a financial mistake, given the underestimations of the real cost of ownership, including taxes and maintenance.
The rise is dramatic. The average yearly cost to keep a property insurance policy active in Florida is nearly double that of the rest of the country.
The United States experienced a 30% increase in the cost to replace a property in the last 5 years.
And now it's leaving many people to wonder if they can still afford to own a home.
The feeling of being trapped in an endless cycle of debt, as expressed by thousands of Americans, highlights a broader crisis within the American middle class. A constant struggle to maintain a standard of living that seems increasingly out of reach.
If the economy has you thinking about working that extra part-time gig to help make ends meet, you're not alone.
The number of people working a second job has reached a post-pandemic high.
In a report by the financial service company Lending Club, 59% of Americans said they lived paycheck to paycheck.
The future of the middle class, and by extension, the American dream, is at stake.
So again, another Net Worth Nation ideology is start the side hustle, right? Start the side business. Now, what did we talk about the other day on our podcast, the Net Worth Nation podcast, the top 5 reasons, you see that video, why most people won't start a business. But this video shows you the top 5 reasons why you should start your business. Now, I'm not going to go into all of that, but you've seen enough from this particular video to understand that if you're going to spend time trying to work 2 jobs and getting double taxed, because remember now, we talked about this before, as a W-2 employee, your tax bracket is totally different than, let's say, the person who does a side hustle with dog sitting, babysitting, a side hustle of Uber or Lyft or Uber Eats or something like that, or Turu or what have you, painting or light repairs or whatever it is that you do on the side, because those tax breaks in that environment can absolutely give you the level up that you need in order to offset the poor salaries and wages that you're having on your day job. So again, I didn't want to mention something in a way to frighten or to rabble or rev people up out of fear mongering, because I don't believe in fear mongering. But what I do believe in is looking at the facts, right? Looking at the data, seeing what's not working and putting together, implementing a plan that truly works. And that is, yes, once again, get those side hustles popping, get those tax IDs and EINs, get those side businesses hustling, and avoid this plague that you see in this particular video. But let's look at it a little bit more before we close out.
The promise of upward mobility, a central component of the American dream, seems increasingly distant for many families. This erosion of the stability and security that define the middle class has profound implications not only for individual families, but for American society as a whole. The concern that future generations may not be able to achieve or surpass their parents' standard of living is palpable. The American dream, based on meritocracy and upward mobility, is under threat.
It's been found 1 in 4 people, 26 to 41 years old, live with their parents.
From family cell phone plans to keeping young adults on health insurance plans until they're 26, to living at home for longer. Nearly a third of young adults moved back home during the pandemic. 2/3 still remain with their parents, and more than half say they moved back out of necessity.
The reality is that for many families, especially the younger ones, the stability and security that once defined the middle class seem increasingly out of reach.
So I'm going to stop there. I don't think it's any need to show anything else. I think what we learned today is what we've already known, but sometimes you just don't want to come to the conclusion that what you thought you knew was accurate. And so I'm living this, right? I got young people living at home. I hear this conversation, the concerns, the fears of going out there. And my wife and I, we've even had these conversations a lot lately, right? Like, when is the right time for people to move out? She said, well, when we were younger, back in the 80s and the 90s, we just kind of took our chances and we went out there and we did what we had to do. But you don't see that tonality now. And a lot of it has to do with everything that we witnessed in the video. When jobs are not paying what a client or particular employee is worth, this is what you get. And then along the fact, high inflation and the cost of doing business, and you add all these factors in, now you can clearly see why you have such a challenge getting people in your household, young people, or what have you, to see things from your vantage point and from your perspective. Now, I want to close out on this note. I opened up by saying we had a presidential debate about a week or so ago. And while this may not go over well for people that don't want to see what's really there to see, how do you explain, when you look at the data from the 1970s to the 80s and 90s and now to the 2000s, that, as we used to say back on the streets, you're hustling backwards, bro, right? You're not gaining any ground. You're hustling backwards. Salaries are not doing it. Housing is too high. Food is too high. The cost of living is too high. So how can a candidate, any candidate, get up there and talk to you and you listen to that candidate, knowing 100% facts that everything we talked about in today's video has not been resolved? So do me a solid. The next time you sit down in a town hall meeting or at any kind of presidential debate with any elected official, talk to them about these issues. Talk to them about the ever shrinking, diminishing middle class society. And when they can address those questions, then and only then should you even consider giving them your vote. Ranji, aka Your Console, the Network Nation. Peace out.